welcome into Speaking Sports, episode number 2 for the 2024 season. And oh my gosh, what a day in college football yesterday. Joined today by my good buddy from Denver, Colorado, Coach Lowell Wightman. 360 Mindset. Coach, how you doing today, buddy?
David, as always, energized and excited to talk football with you on Speaking Sports. It's always a fun time. We discover so many wonderful things.
You know, I know that you deal with a lot of athletes. Do you ever get calls from them after losses like some of the top 10 teams took yesterday, just trying to help them cope with what's going on in the world?
Oh, my gosh, David, in many cases, that's the more calls I get is from after the game of a loss or a very competitive game where there was a loss. That's energy and emotions kind of go off the charts, especially if there's high expectations to begin the game, as you might expect from, you know, the Alabamas of the world when they unexpectedly lose.
Okay, and so, you know, I think I got a great idea for a new business for you, because I am pretty sure that the fans took it harder than the players, and we maybe need a helpline, get it like a 1-800 helpline for Alabama fans or for Tennessee fans or maybe Southern California fans or Michigan fans. I mean, there were a whole lot of people looking for some help yesterday.
Well, especially, David, we can hook into their favorite food and beverage place and stream from those gathering points, because that's where they go after the game.
There might be money in group sessions. You know what I mean? You just
yeah, they feed and take care of their thirst in the moments when they're the most shaken by the loss. I mean, Buffalo Wild Wings has got to love it.
Yeah. At what point though do you just stop eating? I mean, if I'm in a bar watching the Razorback Tennessee game, and yes, I am Razorback Day for a reason, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to stop eating after Tennessee scores that second touchdown in the third quarter to go up 14-3. Food's out the window. We've gone from beer or wine to something with ice and nothing else but the brown water.
Well, and I'll take my alma mater at Iowa. They played Ohio State, and in the first half it was 7-0. The defense seemed to be holding up fairly fine, and it turned out to be 35-7 as an ender. And they couldn't stop Ohio State to save their lives. So you have this built-up optimism of positivity, and then it just gets crashed. You get pancaked on the virtual field of emotional distress.
So I didn't pay so much attention to Wisconsin and Michigan or Southern Cal. Did you watch either of those games?
I watched the Minnesota-Southern Cal game. Because
what happened there?
Oh my gosh, Southern Cal! I don't think Southern Cal had a defense to put up with the Minnesota run-pass combo. Their coach is an epic. Use the run to set up the pass, and typically, as a USC team might predict, they think that they really can only run and don't really have a legit passer. Well, Minnesota proved them wrong on that one. Minnesota has a legit passer and a kid who can move outside the pocket and make things happen. So they just didn't. They didn't cover all 3 aspects of Minnesota's game to stay competitive throughout the entire contest.
So I think in the case of Vanderbilt and Alabama, first time Vanderbilt has beat a top 5 team in the school's history. I mean, think about that. It's 60 tries. They were over.
And well, then, they've come close. Vandy's come close.
They have.
So they've built to this moment.
Absolutely. And well, they were certainly prepared. I tell you what struck me is funny about that is most colleges in the country have switched to the uprights that break down mechanically in situations like that so that they don't have to replace the goalpost. Not Vanderbilt. Their goalpost was still one that the fans jumped on and just bent to the ground, which I thought was hilarious. Hey, why are we going to spend the money on the flex goalpost? We don't need them. Well, now they got to get them.
Well, that's such a great video moment as it slowly moves down by the weight of the human element, and yet the kids are falling off the sidebars. It's quite epic video.
One of the things when I've been in the goalposts have come down 3 times at the University of Arkansas, and the only one that I missed was because I wasn't born in 1956. So when they took it down in 81, when they beat Texas, Texas came in number 1. Arkansas stomps them like 42-8. I think I was still in school there in the marching band that year. Got on TV that year. They took the goalpost down that day. I was in Fayetteville in '99 for the redemption game, and they took them down that day. And they've not come down again. Now they've stormed the field a time or two. I was there when they stormed the field after Bielema's team beat LSU. I was there at the Texas game a couple of years ago when they beat Texas, and they stormed the field. They didn't take the goalpost down, and of course they stormed the field Saturday night. I wasn't there. My son was there, so I was at least represented. But and I never even thought quite a lot about what do you do with the goalpost once you get it down. In '99, they took the goalpost and parked it outside of Tennessee's dressing room, and then they took the other one down on Dixon Street and propped it up against a building and told anybody that cared that's where it would be, and they all came down and autographed it. And nobody really knows where they are today. They did dig one of them up for a video they did for Hog Plus that showed what happened to that one. But Saturday night, Vanderbilt didn't know what to do with them. As educated as they are, they don't even have a clue of what to do with a goalpost once you get it to the ground. They threw one of them in the river. I saw video of emergency firemen were fishing it out of the Cumberland River off of downtown.
I got to give them props that they even got it to the river.
It's a long way from. It's a long way from 21st Street to First Street. That's 21 blocks in a crowd, and those things aren't light.
Downhill. Isn't it?
Down here, but you got to cross an interstate. You got to cross over I-40 there at between 11th and 12th, and then you get to a point on Broadway where they kill the traffic now, especially on the weekends between 6th and the river. You can't drive. And I've seen video of them marching down Broadway with it. The funniest thing I saw though was this guy. He's got his hand on the goalpost, and they're walking down Broadway, and the camera comes in, and he says, "I don't even go to Vanderbilt." he's got the goalpost, and they're walking towards the river with it. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, I'll guess that somebody in the management of downtown Nashville said, just let them through. Let's adjust the lights.
Yeah, that's a $250,000 fine to the conference when that happens. Yeah. Arkansas, that was their second offense in less than 5 years. They're having to pay $500,000. But it's checks they glad to write. It keeps their fan bases happy. So I think it's a cool thing. It's funny, too, because my son, we talked about it, him heading up there. He said, I hope we don't rush the field if we win. I said, well. He said, well, if they do, I'm not going to do it. I said, okay, well, I have pictures of him on the field. It was pretty much after the crowd died down, but he did make it down there.
Well, I tell you what, the Alabama that we know from Coach Saban's reign did not show up this weekend. When you look at the stats, you asked me about the energy of the fans after the fact. Well, if they were watching the same game that I was watching, they wouldn't go to the restaurant to eat and drink their sorrows away. They would just go home because Alabama just didn't show up.
In '98, the year Clint Sterner fumbled up in Knoxville, my dad and I were at that game, and we didn't speak for 3 months. And we weren't mad at each other. We were just mad.
Yeah. It's upsetting when you don't see them compete.
So real quick before we go to the break, what do you think happened? I think in Alabama's case, it was a sense of lack of respect for Vanderbilt and maybe taking them too lightly, maybe not playing their best game. They just kind of felt like they were going through a scrimmage or a practice or something. Mm-hmm. And when you do that in the SEC and one team comes in ready to play and one team comes in not ready to play, you're ripe for a butt kicking.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's the 5-star arrogance that caused them to be put in that position. And it manifested itself in one aspect of the 3 critical areas of the game you need to control, and that was the running game. Alabama did not demonstrate the control and power of their running game as they have in the past. Now, one might be able to say, well, Vanderbilt countered them. They had a defense for that. But what I saw during that game was not the case. It was a matter of 5-star arrogance in their running game that didn't generate the yard. I mean, they had 312 yards passing and something less than 200. No, not even that. 84 yards rushing.
Well, it's something everybody's talking about, and unless you were fans of the teams that lost, I think everybody enjoyed it. I mean, I even had friends of mine coming out of the woodwork. He said, I'm an Alabama fan, but we're so happy you beat Tennessee. We're kind of liking y'all today. So I think that's funny. I do think that, and I want to talk about it when we come back. Actually, let's just take a break. We got Coach Lowell, Wightman, Razorback Dave, Speaking Sports, brought to you by KRT. Well, let's take a little quick break and hear a word from them, and we'll be right back. Every championship, every game, every rep, every workout takes its toll on the body. Get ready for the next one. KRT Athletic Muscle Cream, proud partner of the Big 12 Athletic Conference. Welcome back to Speaking Sports. Razorback Dave here, brought to you by KRT Athletic Muscle Cream. You got to get you some. I'm just telling you. Coach Lowell Wightman joining us today. And, Coach, before we move on, I thought that there was no more testament to the fact that football is a team sport. It is never more represented by Nick Saban saying what he said on game day prior to the Alabama-Vanderbilt game and then having it play out like it did. Did you see that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And even the genius is not any good without his team.
Yeah, and there's going to be probably another season or two that the Nick Saban influence fades, because he's been integral in the recruiting process for the current freshmen, well, maybe sophomores. But so that his presence in physical skill, football skills, football mindset is going to be present. But then you have that other component that we tend to not look at as often as we should. It's the coaching and the environment that's created by the new coaching staff. And I don't know that that's going to maintain itself for as long as the skill level of the players that he recruited. So, it came to pass. What he had to say
in reverse.
Yeah.
In reverse of all the things, of all the days to say it, that was the day. And then I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to see when Lane Kiffin was in his press conference post game for the Ole Miss game, and they were asking him questions, and he was glued to a television watching the end of the Vanderbilt Alabama game. And they just barely had his attention, which I thought was funny. He said, no, this is history right here. You're going to want to watch this or something like that. Yeah. So, Coach, do you think, and we talked about it a little bit I talked about it a little bit last week on the parity created by NIL and the transfer portal. And, it has its unintended consequences, and I get that. But I really like the fact. Well, it's twofold. I tell you what I noticed, at least in Arkansas's games this year, is the referees do not seem to be injecting themselves in the games as they were when there were only 4 teams. Now there's 12. You can lose a game and get into the playoff. You don't have to go undefeated. One loss is not going to kill you if you go into that game highly ranked. I don't think, and the fact that East and West doesn't matter in some of the conferences, I don't think they care who makes it to the championship game in the conference anymore. that, that we used to talk about the stuff called protectionism in the SEC, making sure that Alabama and Georgia were unscathed, getting to the SEC championship game, so that winner was, when it was a 2-team, they knew one of the winners was going to the game. And when it was 4-team, they knew at least one was going, maybe 2. If the undefeated team was to lose by not very much, you could make a case for getting them both in. But everybody else was out, and it didn't make sense to protect the teams that had a loss or 2 or whatever. They don't have to do. I don't see as much of that this year because I think because of the 12-team expansion to the playoff. The more teams that I think everybody that deserves to get in is going to get in. Now, there may be some teams that aren't deserving, but I don't think anybody that's deserving is going to get left out. And that too has led to the fact that you can get beat on any given day by anybody. And Texas has got one coming. They don't think so, but Texas has got one coming. Now, if they leave Manning in at quarterback, it's going to be tougher to beat them. But if they go back to Ewers, Texas has got one coming.
Well, you raised some really great points about parity, actually, and there's two areas that parity will influence. It influences at the top, across conferences, as far as teams, kind of relaxing a little bit, like you said. They don't have to worry about losing one, maybe 2 games, but one. They don't have to worry as much about one game. And then it impacts the bottom. Teams that are, they're kind of in smaller conferences. They typically struggle because of that protectionism thing you mentioned before. But now, because of things like NIL and the portal, there's different influences from both of those. And you also have the structural changes within the game of football in the NCAA, the 12-team kind of thing. So anybody who competes consistently and can ring the bell on the win-loss columns, they got a shot. I didn't think that Notre Dame was going to have a shot at being in there. Now, looking at how they got through the off season, they're being touted as one of the top, perhaps one of the 4 competing for the championship at the end of the season. There are also other teams that are going to be considered as things go along, because, as we're pointing out, some teams are getting beat that we didn't expect to get beat. Now, on the talent side, NIL and the portal are the 2 areas that are influencing talent. Yeah. And I'll let you know what I mean by that, because I think you got a question on your mind about NIL.
Oh yeah, and it's coming up. Oh yeah, it's next on the list here.
So the portal side of things, as you know, we've talked about Arkansas in the last couple of seasons and how the portal has influenced their rosters, as well as the consistency of play that has grown with Arkansas. And one of the things I told you about 2 seasons ago was the coaching staff was key to exercising the talent they got from the portal. If teams and schools can really wrap their arms around the quickness of the change of rosters and make those young people part of the structure of the team quickly, they're going to be able to take advantage of their talent. For those teams who think, oh, we're just going to, like in the pros, I'm just going to recruit this all-pro linebacker who's had this many years of experience, or they've shown this at the other team we're getting them from. Well, they're not the pros yet. They're still young people molding their minds and their skills to match their brains and have that execution deliver itself every single play. It doesn't always happen. But the portals open the door for that potential, and coaches are the key, along with the administration and the school community, and making that happen, the delivery of the skill set to help the team succeed.
We talked about unintended consequences, and we spoke a little bit about it last week, but the quarterback from UNLV that left the team because they didn't pay him enough money.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Dave,
let me just say, okay. If I was a coach and I don't like to lose. I don't know anybody that hates to lose more than I hate to lose, but I would rather lose than to have that young man transfer into my school under any circumstances.
Well, and let me give you
I wouldn't care if he had last name was Tagovailoa. If that is your attitude towards the whole thing, I don't need you. I would rather lose without you.
And let me set this up a little bit. He's playing the card that he was misled. Well, that's contrary to what UNLV does with every single athlete, regardless of talent, regarding educating them about NIL. Right in the first few lines of their NIL educational program, it says no coaches are allowed to offer any money to NIL. None. And so when he says, well, my excuse of my basis for wanting the $100,000 was because a coach offered it to me and I took him at his word. Well, he went through the program. That young man went through the educational program. So it just tells me he didn't pay attention. His ego got the better of him and he listened to the money and didn't recognize the rules that are very clearly stated at UNLV. And the compliance officer has documentation as to the time, place, and message that was sent to this kid, along with others.
How much eligibility does he have left?
He'll have one season left
After this year?
He played the card.
But don't you think he has more leverage if he plays the season out and then makes a demand to stay, or maybe makes a better deal somewhere else than to do what he just did? Because he did not improve his stock at all.
Well, and look at the first three games of the season. They were 3-0 going into the game before the game that he said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm redshirting. And he had great stats. He played against competitive teams. To your point, exactly. He had more to gain by building his numbers and performing as a legitimate, humble, champion mindseted player than he was doing what he did. And so I don't have any real sympathy for him, regardless of how it's going to play out. I don't think it's going to play out in his benefit, whether it's as a football player or somebody making money. In either case, his character, in my opinion, has been damaged because of his own behavior.
Well, and there's room there for another outreach program, maybe to college players that, you know what, you don't know what you don't know. And I can tell you from experience at 22, there's a whole lot you don't know compared to what you do know. And, I would say to all you athletes out there, if you happen to be listening to this, find somebody that knows what's up, that tells you straight and doesn't blow smoke up your tail, and listen to them. Because, maybe that somebody needs that service too. You could start a whole business of services. If one had a mind to, there's a lot of ways that you could. There's a lot of ways I could help that young man in this situation without making anybody mad. There's a lot of ways.
And all the way up the line, Dave, as well as I do, from high school to pros, the message that quality programs say to their athletes is love the game, and then go and play the game with the amount of love you want to give it. And many times a young man like this is not loving the game more than he loves himself or the teammates he plays with. It's real simple. You got the skill, play the game. Play the game with the passion and love that you bring to the turf. And if you do that, you're going to have more successes than you do failures. And eventually you're going to get compensated well and fairly.
Well, that's what I told everybody. Football is too hard to do it for any other reason than a love of the game. Yeah. It just is. It's clearly not for everybody. It wasn't for me. I would have loved to have had the physical talent to play, but sadly I did not. So I supported in the marching band. So you can call me whatever you want on that, and that's fine. I wear it proudly, but I won a game or two for them up in the stands. That's just how we rolled. But just the amount of work that you have to put in, the amount of punishment you have to take on your body, the amount of heartache, anxiety, everything that goes into maybe playing for somebody you don't really care for. If you don't love the game, don't do it. It's not worth it.
And here's a positive hook to your point against that negative we just talked about regarding the young man, the quarterback who left UNLV. Part of the NIL program says, here's the activities that you're allowed to do and get compensated for it because of your NIL, because of your name, image, and likeness. And one of those is camps, like in the off season. You love the game, then you go show young kids how to play the game with the same amount of love that you have. and you can get paid for that. That's an open door of opportunity to get fairly compensated, whereas in the past that didn't exist for football players.
Yeah.
And it's also that's also a point about equalizing the playing field so that football players don't get too much of the attention, because before football players realized they could do camps off season, guess what music students were doing? They were going out doing lessons on their musical instrument or voice lessons as a singer and getting paid for it. And NIL didn't have anything to do with it, nor did the NCAA tell those student singers or actors or musicians that they were violating their amateur status. So now there's parity. Every athlete has a chance to not every athlete. Every student can participate in an activity to get paid for the name, image, and likeness. It's just, if you love your game, then go play it, and play it with the same passion that you have for it.
There you have it, folks, straight from a PhD. We're going to take another quick break, get a word from KRT Athletic Muscle Cream, and we will be right back to wrap it up. You're listening to Speaking Sports with Razorback Dave and the coach, Lowell Wightman. We'll be right back. Every game, every rep, every workout takes its toll on the body. Get ready for the next one. KRT Athletic Muscle Cream, proud partner of the Big 12 Athletic Conference. All right, welcome back to Speaking Sports. Razorback Dave along with Coach Lowell Wightman. Coach, I know at the end of the Arkansas-Tennessee game that Tennessee let Arkansas score there, and a lot of people are kind of making a deal about it, kind of not making a deal about it. They did let them score, but I don't think it was a blanket let them score. I've watched the tape enough to know that I think what they told the players was, if he gets into the second level, let him go. Because there were guys at the line, the defensive linemen were diving for him to try to tackle him, and they couldn't get him. And at the point he broke into the second level, that's when people started turning and letting him in. And they let that running back through too, but nobody could catch him at the line either. And they didn't know who had the ball. That wasn't helping them much. But more importantly, I guess my theory is, how do you feel about letting the other team score? I mean, I know they were trying to save their timeouts. It's a strategy thing. Well, what say you on that?
Well, one of the things that I don't know, you may know this, is what amount of time was on the clock at that key moment where they let him score.
Say that
because
again.
The margin, what was the amount of time on the game clock when
there would have been about 1:17 when the touchdown occurred? They had 1:17 left.
So that's at that point. From my experience on the sidelines, listening to coaches about what's our talent like, and do we believe our talent can get down the field in 1:17 and get a score, a touchdown, because they needed a touchdown to win the game 21-19 if Tennessee decided to do that. That's where I'm at. Letting them score should be a strategic, tactical plan based on your players and their abilities to deliver what you're going to ask them to deliver, and that in this case would have been a touchdown, not a field goal, because they were down.
Could they have held them to a field goal? They could have won it with a field goal. So that could have played into it. The other thing is at that point Arkansas brought in Braylon Russell, and he was a much bigger, much heavier guy that they had done no good at stopping up to that point. I mean, they really didn't do much till he came in on that last drive, and then they couldn't hold him. He was just too big and too fresh to do anything about it. I think they knew if they just let Arkansas run the clock down, they could dink and donk there at the 1 yard line with 4 fresh downs. And I think Tennessee only had maybe one timeout left, maybe two. That they were just there wasn't anything left to do. They were just going to have to try to come back and score more points which
Yeah.
sadly was not the case. But
Yeah, and that's
I get it. I just don't know if I could ever bring myself to tell my kids to let them score.
well, I don't know that that was the language they may have used because I don't agree with that. I'm with you. To just say to them, "Hey, let them score," I would give them the privilege and the respect to say, "Here's my strategy. Here's what I want you to do. Join me in this strategy. I want you to work really hard at controlling the line of scrimmage. They have talent. We have talent. And here's what I believe: if they score a touchdown, then we got to go down in a minute, whatever, and win the game. If we hold them, we win because they're only going to get it. They're only going to get a field goal."
Yeah. No, well, the philosophy makes sense. I just don't know if I could bring myself to do it. And because I have a philosophy about going for two. If the game's not on the line, I'm not going for two. If we're not in the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter, doesn't make because if you're trying to go for two in the first quarter just to get it to 14-14 instead of 14-13, in your mind you've already played out the rest of the game thinking that point's going to matter. And what if it does in reverse?
Well, you and I are similar in our competitive spirits.
Yeah.
And yet I've also learned that the what ifs in my preparation have to be exhausted. I've got to make sure as the head coach or key position coach, I share the what ifs. Well, what if this happens or what if this happens, so that we have a strategic directive within our playbook, so that when we have this situation in front of us where we eventually got beat 19-14, I have a what if. I don't know that the coaching staff was ready for the what ifs, even though they were pretty confident, it seems. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're pretty confident about going down the field and scoring and winning 21-19. Didn't happen, but I'm going to err on that side and not let myself believe they just gave up. Said, I just let them score.
Yeah, okay. So one more thing before we get out of here. The one other thing that the 12-team playoff has done is made the polls a little more ambiguous. I mean, ambiguous. Say that 3 times real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, who's doing the poll? And I mean, how many times have you seen a team win and drop? Win and drop. Take a bye, not even play and drop.
You and I have discussed this many times.
And now they've kind of got it. Like I'm looking at AP and coaches poll. Everybody seems to agree that Texas, Ohio State, and Oregon are 1, 2, 3. And then it's the next 3 teams are Georgia, Miami, and Alabama in different order. And then the next 3 teams are Tennessee, Clemson, and LSU in no particular order. And then I think it's hilarious that the AP has Notre Dame tied for 11th because they don't want to get them too far from 12. But I think, the coaches polls got them at 12.
Yeah.
In front of Iowa State, and the other polls got them tied with Iowa State for 11. I don't know. I've never thought the polls mattered that much. Are they will they be doing the rankings? So I guess they have this all-state playoff predictor, but it looks right now, Tennessee was 72% to make the playoff last week. Now they're 48%. Now Ohio State is magically in the first spot with Texas, Miami, Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon. And I think it's interesting that they have Georgia with a higher percentage to make the playoff than Alabama, even after Alabama beat them. There's a lot more surprises coming in that SEC before the year's over.
Well, remember the timing of polls right now is influenced dramatically by the desire to get people to look at them. And if they say it's coaches poll and the AP, they're going to get looked at this early in the season more carefully. But the real legitimate polls that have a greater chance of predicting the realities that will be in the playoffs and the championships are going to be the ones closer towards the end of the season, where you've got more of the writers from their experience and watching what's going on, listening to the locker room. More of that feedback is going to come out towards the middle and end of the season that's more realistic about what's really happening for rankings. So right now, to me, it's just a matter of putting out some information that draws attention to the social media feeds, which, as we all know, means money, advertisers, yada, yada, yada. So the real substantive polls are going to be towards more the end of the season. That week of Thanksgiving, that's a big time to look at polls if you really want to understand who's going to really work through the playoffs and get to the top for the championships. Maybe right around Halloween and the first part of November is another time to look at it, because you're getting better, more serious feedback about the realities of what's already happened and what we can put more reliability on predicting the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks so much for Coach Wightman joining us today. 360 Mindset. You want to catch his shows and his podcast and his social media platforms, which we'll try to put up next time. we're still getting our legs under us right now, but thank you so much for joining me. That's going to do it for this week.
Thank you, David.
Hopefully next week is as good as it was this week. I can't wait. Arkansas is on a bye, so I'm going to be happy either way. Till next time, thank you to the sponsors, KRT, Athletic Muscle Cream. Get you some. It's great. Everybody should be using it. A proud partner of the Big 12 Athletic Programs. We'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.